was a very depressed sort of in my teens and my 20s. I was depressed. I was very insecure. I other people's opinions were very important to me. I held them a lot higher than my own, and dealt with a lot of things like anxiety and that kind of stuff. And porn was just a very big part of that whole equation. It was something that I kind of relied on a lot. It was something that I guess made me feel good in times when I was lonely. And it was just it was an addiction, at the time. And I can't really pinpoint specifics around that time period, but I do remember just spending a lot of time alone, like laying in my bed, just, scrolling on the phone, watching porn. And it was just like an everyday a thing. And I'm sure a lot of guys listening can relate to this, And I remember I started getting into personal development. That was probably around 2016, 2017 or so. Started getting into personal development, meditation, working out, obviously, stepping outside of my comfort zone to approach women and things like that. And I remember coming across the whole Nofap semen retention thing. And I was like, oh, this is perfect because this is like another thing I can add to my arsenal of like, personal development tools. And if I remember correctly, I just was very difficult in the beginning because this was, 10, 15 years of an addiction that I was just trying to give up like this. And it would get very frustrating. And I think I would go for maybe short periods of time doing it. Never anything too substantial, but to make a long story short, I didn't give up. Over the past 4 years, I just kept trying. I tried to use different techniques, do different things to try to give up the porn and masturbation addiction. And, where I stand today, it's not a part of my life at all.
Right.
I typically will go months of retaining, and when I do release, it's typically because I started dating somebody, or sometimes it might happen for myself by accident or whatever, but I don't fall into that same trap, that same cycle of doing it daily, which you got to learn to forgive yourself for. You don't want to be too hard on yourself when it happens. But to answer your question, in terms of who I was back then to who I am now, it's night and day. I mean, I don't think it was just giving up the porn, but I definitely do think that played a huge. I think it was just a lot of different. I think it came with just age and just always trying to improve myself and just having a lot of self-awareness and looking at areas in my life that I need to improve and actually doing it. So I think it was a combination of a lot of things. But now I just generally my baseline back then was just a very depressed person. And now I'm very positive, very motivated. Even jumping on this call with you back then would have been something that would have probably scared me. Like I was scared of interactions, like stuff that I look back and I'm like, who even was that? That wasn't my natural self. That wasn't who I truly am. So yeah, that's where I am today.
I want to know, how old were you the first time you ever watched pornography? What age were you that time?
I remember I was in 7th grade, so I must have been maybe 12-ish, around that. And it was a group of friends who introduced it to me. And it was so weird because we used to like watch it together. But I didn't think I really understood sex that much. I grew up a little, not even sheltered, but just wasn't too exposed to that as much as maybe some other people were. So yeah, that's kind of where I guess I learned everything, which in my opinion, it's not a great place to learn about sex.
No, I mean, no, it's not. And so I guess at that time you're probably using pretty slow internet speeds, right? Like if you were in grade 7, you must have been like in the 2000s or something. So yeah, so it was just when it was becoming accessible at that time, about that time, right?
Yeah, that's when internet pornography was like probably just, like you said, just becoming a thing. I think that was probably around 2003.
Yeah, that's early. That's really early, I would say, 2003. Yeah, and that's just about when the internet was good enough to be able to do that. Because people say things like, well, pornography's always been around and there's no different. It's like it's not the same as it now. It's like the big difference is the speed and access to it. Like that is a game changer. The fact that you can get there so quickly and at such high speeds. in the past you had to go down to the friggin'
Adult store.
yeah, and actual shifty, and the only people who would go there is probably like the creepy guys, right?
Yeah.
Now it's all hidden. It's all just aware and it's instant, and that is totally in the history of the human race. That is brand new in the entire history of all of the human race. We are the only people. Our ancestors never had this. That's why none of the books, like nobody has any advice for us about this topic, right? And there's no advice being passed down from our parents or grandparents or historical texts even.
Right.
They're not specifically. I'm sure there's stuff like there is stuff in the Bible and various religious texts, but they, there was nothing, there was no digital pornography. So there is no advice for this. It's just totally fresh. And that is why everybody who is our age is kind of just figuring it out by ourselves, like on the fly, you know.
Mhm.
And it's just a really strange thing. So now you basically never watch pornography. It's not a part of your life at all. So, like, what is? Can you explain? I know it's really difficult to explain, but like, what is it when you are like retaining or whatever? You haven't watched pornography, you haven't even masturbated for months and months and months. What is the difference? What is the difference? Like, can you try and explain exactly what? How does that feel?
I think the best word to describe it is just free. I explained in one of my videos how I think my first semen retention video that did really well. You just kind of feel more like a child again, right? You kind of just have this profound sort of like this newfound love for life that you didn't have since you were young. Because as men, we're very addicted to sex, and I think that's a really interesting point that no one has ever dealt with this before. And I think men have always been very sexual. I mean, I think it's in our biology, it's in our nature, but I don't think it was ever as bad as it is now because, like you mentioned, the accessibility. And I think when you start retaining and you give up the porn completely and you sort of clear your mind from all this, you just feel a lot more free. You feel like you kind of lifted this weight off of you. I would say that at the top of everything that you experience when you retain, that is for me personally, um, what I have felt the most is that I just feel a lot more free.
It's so strange because like science has absolutely nothing to say about this, does it? Like science, people look at the Nofap group and they're like, what a bunch of crazies. Like there's no science behind this. It's like just a cult. Everybody's counting their days and whatnot. There's absolutely no science. Yet there's so much anecdotal evidence for this. Like everybody keeps having the same experience. And I personally feel basically the same as you, right? It's like when I first heard about NoFap, my first instinct was like, this is ridiculous. Like, what a stupid name, first of all, NoFap. Like, what is this? Like, these like, people on Reddit being morons. And
Right.
then, I don't know, I think it was around 2018, and it's like, it's like you've been living your life for a long time, and you begin to realize that every time you've had periods without like pornography, like things felt different during
Hmm.
that time. And then you sort of piece it together and you're, wait a second, every time I was like on a trip somewhere, like, like you probably had times you were on a trip and you had no access to it, or you're just away for a week, or you were on holiday and you just didn't touch it. And you're
Hmm.
like, every time I do that, there's a certain feeling that starts to creep in. It's like you finally so you finally wake up from you wake up or something. That's what it
Hmm.
feels like after like 7 days. It's like, oh, like this is how I'm supposed to be feeling every day. This is what it's meant to feel. Like
Right.
before, that was not right. And then now this is the right way of living as a human being. And then you go, oh no, 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 that's just crazy. It's not real. And then you go back to your old habits and then you forget all about it. And I just repeated this process over and over and over again until I begin to conclude that actually it is real. and there's real benefits here, and it makes a big difference to Nofap. It works, and I can only conclude this starting from a real doubter who thought it was nonsense to now just through life experience. It seems legit, and it's strange, but it seems real, and everybody has the same experiences more or less.
How do you think you personally have changed from, let me ask you a little bit about your experience. Like, how long have
Yeah.
you been practicing this, and how do you think you've changed from, when you were watching porn to where you are now?
I suppose the first time it came on my radar was like 2018, something
Hmm.
like that. It's not like before I was like a total loser or anything like that. I was doing okay. I was doing fine-ish, but it was more like before, like I always kind of had the brake pedal turned on, pushed down. Like I was trying, I had lots of motivation. I was pushing forward, but it was like the brake was on or something. There was just something that was stopping me from like progressing. And
Hmm.
that basically the way it feels from my personally, I am on and off sort of Nofap, and I always justify it to myself. I say, I know it's not real, it's nothing, and then I
Yeah.
regret it. I just keep going back and forth. But yeah, it's more like now the brake pedal is being lifted off, and things sort of progress much more easily now. I feel like there's a direction, and things move forward. Whereas before, I would have ideas, but things would never like progress. Things would never move forward. It's like I wanted to do stuff, but it's so strange. It's so difficult to explain, as you know. It's so hard to explain, but it's almost like when I'm doing the nofap, I have like I have more. I just get things done. I just take action, and things just get done somehow. It's like magic almost, you know.
You just kind of
Um,
flow with life. I think it's a lot easier to kind of flow with life, whereas when you are so consumed in that, like you said, it's putting a brake on things. It's like you're just moving a lot slower. So I totally, you're making
yeah.
perfect. I agree with you 100%.
I'm sure I'm making perfect sense to a lot of people. Because people, it's just such a personal thing, but everybody know when you say it, it clicks with everyone. It's like everybody
Hmm.
knows, well, apart from women who don't really understand it.
Right.
Men just, it's like, yeah, it clicks every time you talk about this stuff. It's so weird. But yeah, I would say, yeah, I have made a lot more progress in terms of like my career and by the way, something else is that when I do nofap and so on, I feel like I'm a lot more creative as well.
Hmm.
So if you think about, I recently wrote a story called I call it The Spirit of Seeing,
Hmm.
right? And I wrote that during a period of nofap, right? As you can imagine, that's when I wrote it. And I can just write so well. It's like there's even more creativity as well. It's very strange, honestly.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean because for me, I never considered myself to be a creative person until I started doing this, started this YouTube channel. And then as you see on Instagram, I also post a lot and it requires a lot of writing. It requires a lot of thinking outside of the box creativity. And I don't know if I would have ever started doing any of this stuff without being on retention. So it definitely does spark a sense of creativity in you that is you may have not never gotten if you hadn't retained. But you're right.
Yeah,
I question it a lot too, and I don't anymore. But during the whole 4 or 5 year period, I was always like, is this just bullshit? Is this real?
yeah.
But I've just done so many different periods of it, and I
Mhm.
always feel the same. It's like I've just
Yeah.
proved to myself that it has to be real, you know?
Yeah, it becomes hard to keep doubting it because you
Hmm.
just get the same results every time. It's
Exactly.
just the same every time. And yeah, it's undeniable. But so I am really quite suspicious of the science side of it right now. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I would say during this whole COVID period, we have seen a little bit how science can sort of be controlled and manipulated and so on a little bit, right? I used to think that science was just we can trust the scientists. That was my position before. And now, it's more like certain areas get funding, certain pieces of research get funding, some do not.
Mm,
If somebody has enough money, they can maybe potentially stop research from happening in a
mm,
certain area. And
right.
then when I think about, well, how many billions of dollars does the porn industry actually have? How powerful are they exactly? And why is there no research into this area? Why not? I can't see any good reason why that people wouldn't be curious to learn about like whether there are benefits to stopping masturbation. Because I see no research, no studies. Why? And the other thing that I find very suspicious as well is that it's like you go on if you search on Google and you search for the science and you go, okay, so is masturbation or is porn healthy? The immediate answer that you get from every source is like, yes, it's fine, it's healthy, right?
Mm,
Straight up. But every man, like, they don't even mention like you may experience some tiredness
right.
if you masturbate a lot. You may
Mm,
experience a bit of fatigue. They don't even say that. Like
right.
every man knows that that's how you feel when you're finished, right?
Yeah.
You feel tired, you feel a bit, you have less willpower. Everyone
Range.
knows that. So my point is that why is this not written down on any of the scientific pages? Like everyone knows that that's what happens. So why not? And I'm just really suspicious of that, to be honest. I don't want to sound like a crazy person, but I just think that's really suspicious, in my opinion.
No,
So
I 100% agree with you. It is very strange. But I mean, I guess it's just, I think because it doesn't do any physical damage to you, so that's
mhm,
why they all just see it as innocent. And I think that a porn addiction is very an underrated addiction too, because again, uh, it doesn't cause, I guess, any like physical damage to you like a drug or alcohol
mhm,
would. And I think this whole phenomenon, this whole like retention and nofap thing is relatively new too. So that could
yeah.
be another factor as to why no one has done any real research to it. But I think your theory is definitely plausible. I mean, the porn industry is a billion-dollar industry, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are responsible of making sure that that kind of information doesn't get leaked to the public.
I mean, the thing is, it's the way it may seem crazy, but you know, the porn industry has a really, really good reason to stop that kind of information getting out. Like it's their
Right.
entire business model. And
Right.
if people knew, if it was became common knowledge, they would lose billions of dollars. Like there's so much at stake for them,
Mhm.
you know, and and nobody else really is going to care enough to go up against them. Like there's nobody else has the reason to go up against such a giant industry. There's no like what benefit is there for what organization is gonna bother learning
Mhm.
about this? So I don't know. It's suspicious, but I would say that if any, because I want to address anybody out there who is thinking like there are some people or a lot of people they will only really trust that something is true if there's like a scientific paper on it or if there's a study, right?
Right.
So I would just say that science is constantly evolving. First of all, just because something is not currently being proven yet, that doesn't mean that in 20 years it's not going to be found out and be proven. So science is always evolving. And the other thing I would say is like, don't you've got intuition in yourself about what is right, what is wrong, what makes you feel good, what doesn't make you feel good. Like there isn't science does not know you better than you do, right?
Mhm.
You know how you feel when if you watch porn, you masturbate all the time.
Right.
You know how you feel. You've done it many times, probably. I'm assuming most of this audience probably has.
Right.
And so you don't need a study, right? You don't need science to confirm it for you. You don't need an authority figure to tell you that it's right. It's like you already know. You already know. You have intuition, and you can trust that intuition that this is maybe something that you should not be doing, and you should consider doing what you're doing. Semen retention. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
it's the other thing I say too is like, what do you really have to lose by trying this? I mean, you're
mhm.
gonna get back your time. Number one, that's the thing. I mean,
Mhm.
like you're not putting anything on the line by giving up porn watching. And if you can't
Yeah.
give, then that right there tells you that it's probably not something that you should be doing. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, that's the other thing is that there is no money in people not doing something. Right? As a
Mm,
general rule, there is no money in a lot of people not doing something, which means there's not really going to be a push in that direction. Like
right,
the way that society works is that money pushes ideas out there in a lot of cases. You know, while money pushes where things go, where society, culture goes. So there's nothing to be gained by people not doing something, no profit in that.
right.
Um, the other thing that is annoying me is that people, you know, you say the words porn addiction, but many people would say there's no such thing as porn addiction.
Mhm.
Like that's the current scientific consensus is that there is no porn addiction. It does not exist. It's not an official thing. Um, what do you think? Is that true? How can they say that porn addiction is not real? What do you like? What's your opinion on that?
I haven't heard that personally, but I would say, I mean, do they deny that sex addiction isn't real either? Because
Some people do deny that.
really,
But yeah, they do. Although I think that officially sex addiction is counted as a real addiction, I think. But yeah, no, some people would deny even that. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think that that can be denied. I would, if anything, I would just put porn addiction in the same realm as sex addiction because that's really what you're addicted to. You're addicted to watching sex,
Mm,
uh, and then addicted to essentially having sex with yourself, I guess.
mm.
But I don't think that any qualified medical professional would, in well, I'm sure there are some that would deny that porn addiction is a real thing, but I don't think anybody who is intelligent and actually, understands how addiction affects the brain. I mean, there's that one website, I think it's called Your Brain on Porn. I haven't looked into it too much, but they do, if I understand correctly, they do explain some of the negative side effects of porn watching and how it does affect your brain. Um, I mean, how can you say that, or how can they say that like there's there's such thing as a technology addiction or a social media phone addiction, but there's no such thing as a porn addiction. So, I mean, these things can't be denied. I think they're just new. They're just new. So
Yeah.
that's why it's something that hasn't really been too scientifically, uh, tested yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's a bit of a mystery to me once again why porn addiction is still not recognized as a real thing because it's actually not. So that if you ask it's not in the scientific consensus. They say, well, it hasn't been proven. There's no, I don't really understand how this works, right? But apparently there's a set of criteria that need to be met for something to be classified as an addiction.
I
And
see.
apparently porn has not met this criteria yet. So to say porn addiction is actually, we shouldn't be saying those words because apparently it's not real.
Hmm.
But it seems pretty real to me.
Yeah.
You know, there's enough, and I've been on the Reddit enough, you know, just to see that it's a real thing. People are clearly struggling with it. So yeah, I don't understand that. I would imagine that in 20 years they're going to finally cite the scientists will finally realize, oh, it is real. We were wrong the whole time. Of course, it's real. That's what I
Yeah.
think will happen.
I agree with you 100%. I don't need them to tell me what's an
Yeah,
addiction. I could be addicted to tea if it's something that
yeah,
I rely on every day to make me feel better. And if I'm consuming it in an unhealthy amount, it doesn't
mhm,
really matter what some textbook or what some group of scientists consider an
yeah,
addiction. It's an addiction. If it's ruining my life, if it's holding me back, I'm addicted
yeah.
to it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do think that one of the biggest barriers for people to stop watching porn, to do semen retention, is this thing we're talking about right now. I think a lot of people doubt it a lot because they don't have studies, they don't have science to back it up. I think that's one of the main reasons people either quit halfway through or don't try it. It's
Right.
because they don't want to, they think, oh, people just feel like they need a scientific study to know
Right.
what's right for them to do. And I think it's really important to address that. Like in your future videos, you should, because that is in the back of many people's minds, is that's why they still doubt it. Yes,
Right.
because of the science. So
I
Yeah.
get that to a certain degree. I'm a bit
Mm,
of a skeptic myself when it comes to certain
mm,
things.
mm,
So, for instance, if a doctor were to prescribe me a medication, I
mm,
would want to see trials. I would want to see research. I would want to hear from other people who've taken it. If I'm going to put something in my body, then I would probably want some sort of scientific evidence that this is something I should be taking. But for
mm,
something like this, for giving up something,
mm,
I understand why people, I mean, I think that maybe they use that to sort of justify it because they don't think they can do it or they don't truly want to. So maybe they're
mm,
like, oh, it's bullshit. I don't have to give up porn because there's no science behind it and it doesn't matter.
mm,
But the way I am, and if you're more, if, I think you're like me, if you're sort of into personal development and always improving yourself, I mean, so even like meditation, for example, there is scientific studies for meditation, but even that, you have nothing to lose. There's no risk there. It's literally
mm.
just sitting down every day and being with yourself. Why not try it and just see if it has some effect on you? You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. And then just go into your own body and see how you feel. It doesn't matter if science tells you it's
Mhm.
true or not. I was about to say something really important, but it's just gone out of my mind suddenly. Let me think. No, I can't think what it was now. Never mind. It was a genius. I'm sure it was a genius thought, but it's gone now. Um, yeah. So the thing is, both of us, by the way, are about the same age. I think you're 31, right? I'm the same age as you.
Okay. Oh, are you?
The yeah. So the guys, the 20-year-olds now, right? So if you think about what we had to deal with when we were like teenagers, right?
Hmm.
We had high speed pornography and all that.
Hmm.
Just think about what like Gen Z is dealing with right now. Like things are much, much worse. So I'll tell you in the ways they're much worse. So they still have the high speed pornography, just like we did when we were that age. But they've also got a lot of soft porn
Hmm.
in their daily lives. So I don't know if you've ever made a bloody TikTok account, but if you make a TikTok account, the first thing that will happen is you will start to get clips of like, I don't want to, what e-thoughts, is that what they're called? Like the first thing you see is like girls half naked
Right.
dancing. And you
Right.
scroll to the next one, there's another girl. You scroll to the next one, there's another girl. And they have these clips have like 10 million views, 100 million views, 50 million views of these like 18-year-old girls dancing naked for TikTok. So they're not, it's soft porn, but it's incredibly triggering for guys, right? And that is on TikTok Reels, it's on Instagram, it's on YouTube. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but if you're on YouTube, the thumbnails that you get on videos, they'll be like some girl like bent over,
Right.
to get people to click on the
Right.
thumbnail. And this stuff is everywhere, everywhere, literally everywhere. And you have OnlyFans and you have cam girls as well. You can go on online dating sites and the girl will say, check out my OnlyFans in the description. It's like
Mhm.
everywhere. And
Yeah.
there's just a route. It's just this soft porn everywhere. And then you have the normal music videos and advertising billboards and everywhere. And so the environment is so like sexualized now. And so if you're a 16 or 18-year-old guy, like it's just going to be so hard to break out of it. Like,
Mm.
like, do you have any advice for Gen Z, like the new guys, like young people who want to control this habit?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, James. I didn't really think about that because even when we were young
Mm,
and we had internet porn, it was still like a thing. Like we had to actually go and get on the computer and when our parents weren't home and then like watch it.
mm,
We didn't have social media like the way it is now. And it just wasn't as accessible. And I've never really thought about that too much, but I would say for younger guys where it's just literally everywhere. And I think this is why a lot of younger guys are very lonely and,
mm,
struggle a lot with their self-image. It's like because even with the sort of that clickbaity kind of naked women all over the place, they're also constantly comparing themselves to other men with the jacked bodies and things like that. And it's like this is why so many young men are lonely and depressed. And my advice would be is really the only thing you can do is you can't be afraid to step away from the crowd and do your own thing. You know, don't be
Mhm.
afraid to spend time alone. Don't be afraid to do what you have to get off. If you have to delete all your social media and that's weird for your age, I
Mhm.
highly recommend you do that because it's going to pay off. If you have to cut off some friends, you have guy friends who are just always talking about the strip club and porn, I would recommend spending some time away from them. You know, that's basically how I got to where I am on my personal development journey. I had to be very vigilant in who I surrounded myself with, what kind of information I was consuming or content I was consuming. Um, you're gonna have to you're gonna have to be different from everybody else, and you're gonna have to really do that. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And the whole idea of actually deleting your social media apps, and people say they're going to do that a lot. Not many people actually do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are some downsides to doing that. You might miss out on a few things. You are going to miss certain things, the benefits of social media. But I have to say, on average, I would say the benefits of deleting your social media apps and profiles is there's more benefits than negatives. I have to say, the most obvious one for me is TikTok. It has to go, right?
Yeah.
TikTok, there's no real benefit. People say, oh, but I learned a few little things on TikTok, a few tricks and tips. It's like you barely learned anything. Okay. And you wasted a lot of time, and you probably um what probably happens for many guys is that when they open TikTok, they scroll, they see half naked girls, they get aroused. This is their trigger. Then they go to porn sites, and it's like almost like a funnel, right?
Mhm.
Like a sales funnel directly to porn and masturbation. You start on TikTok, you wake up in the morning, you start scrolling TikTok,
Right.
you see something that triggers you, you end up on porn sites, and this just happens again and again. TikTok is really bad for that.
Mhm.
Probably Instagram probably has to go as well. As for YouTube, that's a debatable one, and they have to watch your content, obviously, on YouTube, so they shouldn't delete their accounts. And as for Facebook, it can stay probably, or maybe not. Maybe you want to delete Facebook as well. But anyway, I'm going off track. Um, it could be a wise decision to actually delete your social media apps, and that's hard to do. But I think that for a young guy could be a really, really good idea, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you're first starting out with this whole thing and you're trying to move away from all that, I think you have to do whatever you have to kind of like, rewire your brain and get it back to that natural state. And you might have to go to some extreme lengths. I totally agree with you about TikTok. I think that that's going to probably be the worst one.
Yeah.
But even if you are going to use those social media apps, I think the biggest thing you want to avoid, and this is not going to be easy, is to just avoid any kind of mindless scrolling. So if you
Mhm.
want to, do YouTube, just have a few of your favorite creators who you know aren't going to be posting anything like that, and just watch their content. Like just go specifically on YouTube, go to their channels, and just watch what they post. Try to avoid scrolling through like the homepage or where the algorithm throws things at you. My advice would be to just try to stay away from that and just be very vigilant with what you're looking at. Because I think for myself, I don't really see a lot of that stuff, especially on Instagram. I mean, I'm very careful about who I follow. I don't, occasionally, maybe it pops up. And that's the thing. Eventually, you'll get to a point where you'll get strong enough where it's not going to, even if it's dangling in your face, um, if you've been vegetarian for long enough and then somebody tries to hold a steak in front of you, if you've been vegetarian for 3 years, it's probably not going to appeal to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Similarly, if you once you get to a point where you get strong enough, it's going to especially if you've been retaining for a while.
Mm.
I do not even sexualize women anymore. Most of the ones that post stuff like that on the internet, I just feel bad for them because I know they're
Yeah.
just doing it for attention and they lack self love. So that's there's just have hope that eventually you are gonna overcome that barrier.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, in the beginning is the real hard part is on the front end, as they
Mhm.
say, right? The first be the first week is probably
Mhm.
the hardest by far. You know, the
So
cool thing about if you are going to stay on social media, the cool thing is that you can actually um the algorithms are always watching what you do, what you click, and what you spend time on.
right.
So when it shows you a video of a half naked girl, and then you ignore it and you don't click it, then it's going to show you less of those, right?
Right.
So you are creating your own For You page. You are kind of choosing what you see
Mhm.
based on what you click on. So you can sort of create your own feed, right? So it's up to you. And if you're seeing naked girls all the time, it's because you've clicked them before. The algorithm knows you're likely to click it again. So you are in control of the algorithm in a way, right? So
Exactly.
there's one more thing I want to say. If we're talking to Gen Z, I
Yeah.
want to say that in many ways, your bedroom, okay, can be a little bit like kind of like, when they put like a rat inside a cage
Hmm.
and they have like tubes feeding them. They do experiments on rat. They might have a tube with like cocaine water in it, or maybe sugar water, right? In a lot of ways, your bedroom is almost like you're putting yourself inside an experimental cage of some kind because
Hmm.
you're there, you're isolated, you don't have any interaction. What you do have is a few dopamine feeding stimulus tubes, we might call them, which are coming in through your technology. Like,
Right.
right? So, what they found with rats is that if they are inside a rat cage and they're isolated, they have no friends, they're just in by themselves. What they do is the rats keep drinking cocaine water. If you give it to them, they'll keep drinking it until they die. They'll just keep drinking it and get totally addicted. But
Mhm.
if you put rats in a different kind of cage, they call it rat park. Okay, because in this cage there are lots of fun like toys to play with, and there's
Mhm.
other rats in there. They can socialize, they can interact. If you put them in that environment, they don't get addicted to the cocaine water,
Right.
right? So basically, I would say, um, if you're struggling with any kind of addiction, what you need to do is really, I know it sounds kind of boring, but you need to focus on your life generally. That means having friends, romantic interests, hobbies, and goals, and all that. And if you do that and you aggressively pursue those things, the idea of watching girls on the internet is just going to seem ridiculous and just not is not going to have any pull. It's going to be like, why would I do that? Like that does
Exactly.
it only really appeals to you when you are isolated, when you are in your bedroom, and when you're lacking connection. That's when it's more appealing at that time. So I'd say aggressively pursue connection with other people, and pornography will not be tempting anymore, I would say.
Yeah, I
So
100%. And James, you just gave me a good idea. I would say one thing for anybody watching this, one practical thing you can do that's going to seem completely unrealistic probably for you, but is to avoid being alone in your room with your phone.
yeah.
So my advice, I said in one of my recent videos, is to always keep your phone charging. Like I'm like out here in the living room, charge your phone out in another room separate from your bedroom.
Mm.
Try to avoid laying in bed with your phone. Try to make that a prerogative, which probably won't be easy, but it'll
Mm.
definitely be, you know. And yeah, exactly what you said about building connection,
Mm.
which we live in a time where it's getting harder for younger people to connect because a lot of things are online. It's a lot about digital media. Um, but I always recommend to also just learn how to get comfortable doing things by yourself because that's when people have came into my life. Go to the park by yourself, go on a hike by yourself, go sit down in a coffee shop by yourself, and just start small. Get used to just making eye contact and smiling at people. I've always been fairly social, so I can't relate too much to some guys I know are very introverted, very shy. Even on top of the porn, they're addicted to video games as well. And I know that going out and meeting people probably can seem impossible. But my advice is to just step out of your comfort zone in small ways. Talk
Yeah.
to the cashier, talk to the girl working at the store. Just start very simple, small dialogues with people, and just practice getting comfortable in those environments.
Totally. Yeah. They say that they call your identity. They say it's like a slow moving fluid. So
Mhm.
it can seem like it's impossible to change if you're like a guy, you're like a a nerdy type of guy, you spend a lot of time alone, you're socially anxious, you got no self-esteem, you think, well, I'm never going to be able to change this. It's like you can. It tends to happen sort of gradually, normally. But when you do take these steps, like you said, you do these things, you begin to shift. And by the time a year or 2 years has passed, you can see that a lot has changed from taking these little steps. Yeah, definitely. And there was something else I want to say. Yeah, it's like what you're saying. It's like, look, go outside. Like, I know it's simple, but like, reality is way better than screens, basically. Reality is so good. Screens are such a pale imitation of the real world. It's like video games are nothing compared to like traveling, right? Or like starting a business or something. That is a lot more interesting and exciting than video games are nothing compared to that. And the same with pornography is that it's nothing compared to real sex, right? It's nothing. It's just it's hollow. It's like 20% of the real thing, something like that. It's like a very very low resolution version of the real thing, Or what do you have in pornography? You just have a screen, digital pixels, and something to remember as well. All the girls that you stare at on your screens, they're not real. Like
Right.
and I want to see if I can try and put that through. They're not real. Like they're not here with you. The only thing that is with you is you have some electronic pixels on a device. They are not here. I know that sounds obvious, but the girls that you see online, they don't know you exist. They've never met you, right?
Mhm.
They don't know who you are. And it's like you're basically just playing mind games with yourself. That you are alone. When you watch pornography, you're by yourself. You're just with a few electronic pixels. And apart from that, it's you. There's nobody else there. And I know that seems obvious, but I think it's your brain kind of forgets that and gets tricked by the screen. It's like, no, the girls that you're looking at, even if you're they don't know you exist. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And sometimes you just bringing yourself back to awareness and just reminding yourself of that in the past, that has stopped me from wanting to watch porn. Just reminding myself, like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah. You can imagine that there's a camera on the ceiling, or let's say a being or God or something. Somebody is watching you from above. Like, what
Right.
would they see? They would just see you there like all day, just by yourself. And when it's you, it feels like you're doing lots of stuff. Like you're
Ah,
looking at this tab, you're watching a video, you're watching a porn video, all this different video. If somebody watched you from above on a third person view, they would just see you sat there,
mhm.
not really moving on a chair by yourself, and that's it. That's what they would see from a third person perspective.
Right.
And you would look ridiculous. You know, you just imagine somebody watching you. You look ridiculous. So yeah, and I think sometimes I feel like people who are religious, they they have this. They're taught that God is always watching and whatnot, and
Mhm.
that can be a sort of helpful sort of belief. I'm not saying you have to be religious, but if you imagine that you're being watched, that your actions are being judged, even when you're
Right.
by yourself, and because even if it doesn't matter if you're by yourself, you will how do I put this? You are sort of being judged by life. And people may not know that you spent 3 hours at home watching pornography, but they will know that the consequences of that will be apparent. They will know that you are less confident and you have less self-esteem, and women can certainly tell somehow if they're strange in female instincts. Somehow they know, right? When you've been uh, at home watching or masturbating, women can sort of sense it somehow. Do you
I
know what I'm
agree.
talking about?
Yeah. And for my spiritual guys watching this, the way I like to look at it is when you engage in sort of those low conscious behaviors, I feel like you're putting out a certain like frequency out into the universe, and you're not going to receive anything that you should when you're engaging in stuff like that. And yeah, like you said, women too. Like I honestly firmly believe. I used to think the female attraction thing was nonsense, but I firmly believe they can smell the retention on you like a fucking police dog.
Yeah.
Like they really can.
Yeah, it's weird, and but people maybe think that's ridiculous, but it's like, there's a lot about the human body and stuff that we still don't know. There's loads of mysteries about how the body works, and we don't know what consciousness is. There's loads of stuff we don't know. So it's not that crazy to think that, I mean, like that women would know something like that or could sense something like that. They know that we have pheromones like that go out that cause attraction, right? So there's all kinds of things that we don't know that's going on. So it's not so crazy to say these things. And I think that that's what I'm going to say, is that it sounds crazy, but it's not. There's lots of stuff that we don't know about the human body. So yeah.
I agree. I also think too, like even aside from the pheromone theory, which I think is totally plausible, I think that when you get off the porn and the masturbation and you no longer are addicted to sex, it makes you a lot more confident and it helps you to raise your self-esteem. And this is going to show in your actions and the way that people perceive you. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's going to seem as obvious to you, but I think it's going to be in small ways. Like I know for definitely 100%, I make way better eye contact now than I ever did.
Yeah.
And a woman can literally probably fall for you just because you made really good eye contact with her, as opposed to normally would look down. So I also think it's like little subtle ways like that you may not realize, but other people do, you know?
Yeah, and there are things like micro expressions on your face, like the eye contact, all that stuff is actually really important for attraction. And if you speak to anybody whoever did sort of pick up or whatever, they know this, and they know all about how body mannerisms and body language and facial expressions, how it's so important. It's everything. And yeah, and so it is going to affect that. Salespeople know about micro expressions and the way, we can't explain it, but we have intuition as human beings, and we can feel when somebody is maybe not so confident. You can sort of feel it. Maybe you can't put your finger on exactly how you know,
Right.
but you just know somehow. It's a combination of the way they're standing, the expressions on their face, the way their arms, their hands are moving, and you can know this guy's not really confident. And anyway, so girls can tell that kind of thing. So I think it's really important. I think it's like it can make all the difference not watching pornography. So
I agree 100%.
So we've done almost an hour. I don't know if you feel like wrapping up anytime soon. Do you have anything else to say? Perhaps anything else you wanted to talk about before we finish up today?
No, but I think that this was a very, very informative. I learned a lot speaking with you. I enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to doing more in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely would like to do it again. And I like to get more like a human side from you. It's kind of good, like a more personal human sort of stuff. But yeah, I'm really interested in this topic. So yeah, that was great. And I would say people listening, especially younger guys, I would say listen to us, I think both of us have kind of lived it. In a way, we've kind of been through it, and we are handing down advice now to the people coming after us. And I think it should be listened to. So I have nothing else to say. I don't know about you, but
No, I'll just add to what you just said. It's when you're consuming content on YouTube, just be very aware of when you're listening to somebody speak. I feel like you can tell when someone is being genuine and when someone is just saying things to get views and clicks. Maybe when you're younger, you're a little more naive and it's not as easy to tell. But now I watch somebody's video about semen retention and I'm like, he's just doing this because he knows that this is a popular topic and people are going to watch it. But like you and I, we're actually really passionate about this. We're passionate about helping younger guys. And those are the content creators. That's the kind of content you want to consume.
Totally agree. Yeah. you can tell if somebody's genuine or not most of the
Right.
time. So yeah, guys, thanks for listening. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah,
And
man.
thanks everyone. Catch you next time.